Stop what you're doing right now. This is the story of a woman who traded a life of betrayed luxury for an honest struggle, only to have her past, and the spitting image of her ex-husband, walk right into her path 6 years later. He wants the truth. She built her world on silence. If you believe a woman's strength can rebuild anything, hit that like button. Your likes fuel our channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the human heart. 6 years later, the ghost of the past. San Francisco vibrated that afternoon, as it rarely did. The sky, a dense blue, seemed to press down on the city's old Victorian rooftops with a light that felt almost solid. The narrow, curving streets, like unresolved memories, echoed with the sound of hurried footsteps from tourists and locals. Voices mingled in different languages. Laughter, camera clicks, distant cable car bells, and in the middle of this history-saturated scene was Ethan Cole. He walked aimlessly, his shoulders rigid, his hands shoved into the pockets of his gray coat, his brow slightly furrowed. His phone vibrated in his trousers, but he didn't pull it out. Not today. It was the anniversary of his divorce. 6 years exactly since he signed those papers with black ink and cold hands. Not that he counted, but he knew. His body knew. He had allowed himself a walk through the North Beach district purely out of instinct, or perhaps as a form of self-punishment. He had avoided these streets since Clara left, since her name became a kind of ghost, whispering through the windows of the empty house. But something that afternoon brought him back. Maybe it was the smell of autumn, maybe the silence behind the noise, or simply the weight of a loneliness that no longer surprised him. He slowly walked up Lombard Street. His eyes scanned curved glass storefronts, moss-covered stone walls, children running with ice cream dripping from their fingers. He stopped in front of a used bookstore, pulled out an old copy of Kerouac, and flipped through it without reading. The paper smelled of time. The poetry, if it still lived there, no longer touched him. It was then that everything stopped. Not time, but something inside him. An invisible force rotated his face to the side, as if a silent hand pushed his chin, and he saw, there, a few yards away, walking in the opposite direction, was her. Clara. The name formed in his mind with the weight of a contained blow. She hadn't seen him yet. She walked distractedly, holding the hand of a boy who must have been fetos, maybe 6. The boy looked around with a serene curiosity, his brow slightly furrowed, his body leaning to one side, as if trying to absorb the world. Ethan felt his knees buckle an inch. The boy was his portrait, not a vague or generic resemblance. It was him, those intense brown eyes, too large for his face, that slightly arched brow, like someone carrying questions he doesn't yet know how to ask. The firm chin, the way he walked, hands loose, sure-footed, the slight forward tilt of his neck, as if he were always listening for what wasn't being said. Clara looked to the side and saw him. There was no fear, no gasp, no flight. She simply stopped for a second, her eyes locked onto his with a mute, undecipherable force. It wasn't anger, nor fear. It was something more solid, a wall of silence between two worlds that once loved each other and now looked at each other as strangers. Ethan took a step. His heart hammered so loudly he felt his temples throb. He opened his mouth. The word was about to come out, but the air seemed to fail. "Clara?" he tried, but the voice didn't reach his lips. She squeezed the boy's hand more firmly, looked away, and began to walk. Not fast, not hurried, but with an irreversible decision, like someone closing a door without making a sound. Ethan wanted to run. He wanted to shout. He wanted to call the boy by a name he didn't even know. but his legs wouldn't obey. They were nailed to the ground, like the roots of a rotten tree. Everything inside him screamed, but his body refused to react. The crowd swelled, tourists in colorful hats, students with backpacks, a couple laughing loudly, a dog barking. And in seconds, she was gone, vanished like smoke in the middle of the street. He searched with his eyes everywhere. He spun his body. He looked desperately, but there was no sign, neither of the woman, nor of the boy. Nothing. Only the echo of a life he didn't know existed. He leaned against a stone wall, trying to breathe. His chest hurt, not like a heart attack, but as if someone had opened his ribs with bare hands and ripped something out from within. He was cold and sweaty. His hands trembled. He tried to rationalize. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe the boy just looked like him. Kids look alike. It wasn't a certainty. But then he remembered the eyes. Those brown eyes, identical to his own at the same age. And there was no way to pretend. Ethan Cole, renowned architect, son of one of the most influential families in California real estate. He was stopped in the middle of the street like any ordinary man, facing an old wound that never healed, and that was now bleeding again. Deeper, uglier, realer. A man who had everything, then lost everything, and now discovered that perhaps he had never known anything. The city continued around him as if nothing had happened, because to the world, truly, nothing happened. Just another man standing in front of a bookstore, just another pale face in the crowd, just another story no one saw happen. But for him, right there, in that instant, reality had cracked, and through that crack, he saw something he couldn't unsee. Before the crack, the betrayal, 6 years earlier. Before the crack, before the silence, before Mateo. There was a woman trying to hold together what was already collapsing. Clara would get up early, make coffee, set the table with 2 mugs, even when he left without touching either. Trying was the verb she conjugated most often alone in those days. Trying to smile, trying to talk, trying to get Ethan to look at her the same way he looked at his projects of glass and concrete, with fascination and attention. But his eyes had become foreign maps. There was no path left, only walls. Ethan came home late, always smelling of cigarette smoke and boredom. He said he was overloaded with the new bid, with the firm, with his father's pressure. But Clara knew he was overloading himself with his own coldness. She felt like someone noticing a roof leak, that something in their house was crumbling inside. That morning, a fine rain tapped against the glass windows of their house in the Marina district. Clara looked at her reflection in the mirror. Sunken eyes, dry mouth, a trace of forgotten makeup beneath her chin. She decided not to cry. She showered. She pulled her hair into a hasty bun. She grabbed a coat, and she left. She carried a bag with freshly baked turnovers and an envelope. Inside, a small, symbolic gift. A sketch of the project they designed together in their first month of marriage, on tracing paper. They never built it, but Clara kept it. It was more than a draft. It was memory. It was roots. I'm going to the firm. I'm going to surprise him. She said it aloud, to no one, perhaps to convince herself. She took the subway, got off at Civic Center Plaza, and walked to the commercial building where the architecture firm, Cole and Associates, was located. She climbed 3 flights of stairs, each one slower than the last. Her heart wasn't beating fast. It was shrinking. Each step felt like a question. The hallway was silent. The main door was ajar. She could have knocked, but she pushed the door with her fingers and slowly walked in. Her voice was the first thing, low, husky, laughing. If we keep this up, We're going to end up designing the wrong kind of bed, she said, amidst muffled laughter. Then, the image. She saw Ethan sitting at the drafting table, amidst papers and rulers, his shirt half open, the secretary's fingers between the buttons. She saw the two of them close, laughing, with their eyes closed. She saw her hand sliding down his neck, as if it already knew the way. She saw the body that was once hers, belonging to another presence, and something in her broke. But silently, Clara did not scream. She did not run. She did not slam the door shut. She did not throw the envelope to the floor. She simply backed away, as if the scene before her were a slow-motion fire, as if looking too long meant letting the smell of betrayal soak into her skin. She walked down the 3 flights of stairs with chilling dignity, the bag of turnovers still in her hand. The envelope remained. She walked out of the building like someone leaving a burning house, but on the outside, she was intact. Inside, there was no roof left, nor floor. She hailed a taxi and didn't look back. That night, Ethan came home as usual, late, exhausted, without looking at her. He found a cold dinner on the table and a letter on the plate. 3 lines. I don't want explanations. I want distance. I want a divorce. She wasn't in the bedroom, nor the bathroom, nor the house. Ethan might not have understood at first. Perhaps he thought it was a bluff, a crisis, a whim. But she didn't return. The next day, Clara's lawyer called. 2 days later, the separation papers were filed. And for the first time in years, Ethan perceived the silence. Not the silence of someone's absence, but the silence of someone who never returns. Interactive question. Clara made a split-second decision to walk away without confronting Ethan. Do you think her silent exit showed ultimate strength, or was it a missed opportunity for her to speak her truth and defend herself? Share your thoughts in the comments. The secret. Mateo. The news arrived without warning. On a soft, late spring day. A missed period. A strange feeling in her body. A sharp intuition. She bought a drugstore test and waited alone in the bathroom of the house she had shared with Ethan. The 2 lines appeared with cruel speed, unmistakably. The answer was there. She was not alone. She never would be again. She sat on the cold tile floor, the test between her fingers, her legs bent, her heart trying to organize its own beats. She should have cried. She didn't. She touched her flat stomach with the palm of her hand and whispered, without knowing why. You came. The news could have been light, but an old shadow covered everything. A memory flashed in her mind. Clear, direct, threatening. If you ever get pregnant and we split, I will take that child from you. The Coles have power. Never forget that. He had said that one night during an argument, long before the betrayal, when fighting already replaced intimacy, when she dared to say she dreamed of children. And he, with the coldness of one who knows the weight of the family name, cut the dream in half with that dry, unshakable sentence. At the time, Clara laughed. She thought it was an exaggeration. But now, with those 2 lines on the test, the phrase resonated with a different gravity. It was a threat, and more. It was the memory of the man he truly was. She spent the following days in silence. She left the house only for appointments, always at off-peak hours. She avoided friends, neighbors, even her family. Her small belly could still be hidden. But the fear grew. She knew what the Coles were capable of. She knew about the power of Ethan's father, his connections with judges, his political influence, the way they silenced scandals and manipulated court decisions. She had heard stories. She had seen it happen to her cousin, who lost custody of her son for being emotionally unstable. Instability, in that case, meant trying to leave a sick marriage. Then she understood. She could not stay. The decision came one sleepless night. Sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clutching the pillow to her chest. She took stock. She had little money saved. A gold bracelet her grandmother had left her. Some clothes, and the instinct to protect that little heart, beating inside her. She called her mother. In Oakland. She didn't explain much. She just said, "I need to leave." "Today? Just the two of us. Can you?" There was silence on the other end. Then, a brief answer. Yes. She packed in an hour. Few clothes, documents, the pregnancy test hidden between the pages of a poetry book. She left the house before sunrise, called a taxi. She didn't look back. The apartment, once a home, was now an empty shell. Every corner still had his scent, and she could no longer bear that expensive perfume, which hid so much venom. She reached the terminal with a racing pulse, bought a one-way ticket. Boarding the bus, she sat near the window, wrapped in her coat, like an improvised armor. She looked out. As the vehicle pulled away, the streets of San Francisco slowly faded. Every street lamp, a memory left behind. She arrived in Oakland shortly after noon. Her mother was at the door. She hugged her without asking questions, without demanding explanations. Just hugged her, tightly, silent. "Present," Clara cried. Finally, a muffled cry. No scandalous tears. It was more a release than a desperation. In the first few days, she didn't leave the room. She slept a lot. Or little. She spent hours with her hand on her belly, trying to imagine a future she couldn't quite see. Her mother cooked for two, spoke little. It was as if she knew that silence could also be a hug. When she finally spoke, it was a Sunday. "Do you want to tell him?" Clara took a long time to answer. Then she shook her head. "No, I can't. He's the father. He's the danger." Her mother didn't insist. The rebuilding. Clara Aranda. The weeks turned into months. Her belly grew. Along with it, her strength. Clara found a small technical drawing course offered by a local NGO. She started attending. Then she got an internship at a modest architecture studio with a kind, widowed architect who taught her more than any university. There, she wasn't the ex-wife of the coal heir. She was just Clara. Talented, thirsty to start over. The pregnancy was difficult. Nausea, low blood pressure, insomnia. But she resisted. Every beat of the baby's heart was a reminder that she was alive, that choosing to flee was choosing to live. Mateo was born on a hot September afternoon. The labor was long, and when she finally held him in her arms, everything around her silenced. There was no pain, no fear, only him. His eyes opened, brown, immense, and they looked at her as if they already knew her. Clara smiled. "You really came." That night, she wrote a single sentence in her diary. "From now on, everything is for him," and she kept her word. From the day she first held Mateo in her arms, Clara never wavered again. Not because there was no fear. It existed. Pulsating, sleepless nights, and uncertain afternoons. But she learned to use fear as fuel. Every step, every achievement, was taken with the firm hands of one who carries her own world in her lap. Mateo grew up surrounded by affection. There were no luxuries, but there was solid ground. There was no powerful surname, but there was a clean, honest name. Clara learned to make lentil soup in silence, to deal with night fevers without panicking, to tell stories of enchanted worlds, while her own eyes were red from exhaustion. At first, she lived with her mother in a small apartment on the second floor of an old building in the Piedmont Avenue neighborhood. The room she shared with her son had peeling paint, but the windows overlooked a sky that seemed to understand her silent prayers. When Matteo turned 2, she got a spot for him in the municipal daycare. Clara started working full-time at the same studio where she had interned, now as a project assistant. 3 years later, she received a partial scholarship to an architecture college. At night, she would sit in the tiny living room and sketch freehand while Matteo slept. The lines she drew were no longer just facades or structures. They were maps of her survival. She had learned to transform absence into foundation, pain into concrete. Everything that once broke her was now part of what held her up. She excelled. Professors saw something unusual in her, a rare blend of technical precision and contained emotion. She designed houses that seemed to understand people's emptiness. She chased every missed class. She did assignments while washing dishes. She studied during pediatrician appointments. She read at the edge of the bed while Matteo asked for one more minute before sleeping. She earned a full scholarship in the 3rd semester. Then, her first paid internship. And with that, she rented a small apartment just for them. 2 rooms, a narrow hallway, a balcony where she planted basil and lavender. She never told anyone about Ethan. Her college classmates imagined she was widowed. Some thought she was a single mother by choice. Clara didn't correct them. She didn't lie. But she didn't give anything away either. She kept that part of her story like someone carefully holding broken glass, cautious not to cut her fingers. For Matteo's birthdays, she baked simple cakes and filled the apartment with recycled balloons. In the photos, only the 2 of them. Mother and son, a silent portrait of everything she had built without fanfare, without help, without surnames. Sometimes, she dreamed of him. Not Ethan, but the child Matteo could have been if he had grown up with his father's presence. In some dreams, he ran in a huge garden taking 2 hands. In others, he said, "Mom, why didn't he come?" And Clara would wake up sweating, swallowing a guilt she wasn't sure was justified. But she never doubted. She never let the decision to have fled slip into regret. She knew what she had done. She knew why she had done it. And she knew that by doing it, she not only saved herself, but also saved her son from growing up in the shadow of a name that never meant protection. At the age of 5, Matteo first asked, "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" Clara knelt, held his face between her hands, and replied, "Because you have me, and I never left you." Matteo didn't answer. He just leaned his head on her shoulder, and in that hug, Clara understood that love was also a language spoken with presence. In her final year of college, she presented her thesis, a social housing project focused on single mothers. The jury was silent for a few seconds after the presentation. Then they applauded. Her advisor hugged her with teary eyes. She left the room with the feeling of having rebuilt everything that had once been demolished. She got a job at an architecture firm focused on social projects. It wasn't Ethan's award-winning firm, but it was a space where her voice had weight. She bought a used bicycle. She rode Matteo to school. On Saturdays, they frequented the same corner ice cream parlor. She always ordered vanilla. He, mint chocolate chip. It was the only fixed habit of the week. The ritual of remembering that life also needed sweetness. And so, with small, dignified steps, Clara got there. A firm woman, mother of a child who smiled with his whole body. An admired professional, owner of her own story. She won, and she didn't need anyone to see it for it to be true. But now someone saw the return, stepping onto her ground. The image of the boy wouldn't leave Ethan's mind, so sharp it hurt. The features, the gait, the attentive silence he himself had at 5. The eyes. God. The eyes. It was as if time had folded in on itself and given Ethan back the mirror of a past he never lived, but that was now looking at him on the streets of San Francisco, with an relentless naturalness. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't projection. It was the truth. In the days following the fleeting encounter, Ethan tried to convince himself that he didn't need to know more. He tried, because he knew what would come next. Guilt, fear, shame. But he failed. In his office, he drew lines on blueprints that led nowhere. At night, he read reports he didn't retain. He started sentences and left them unfinished. When someone asked if he was okay, he automatically replied with a clear. But inside, everything was noise. He hired someone discreet to investigate. He asked them to track Clara, but without invading, without causing a scandal. 2 days later, he received an envelope in hand. Oakland, Piedmont Avenue neighborhood. Her mother's name as the apartment renter. The boy's school. A first semester report card. Registration photo. Name, Matteo Aranda. He didn't carry his last name, but the face was enough. Ethan sat there, the document on the table, like someone looking at the file of a life he never participated in. And with that, the inevitable question. What would he do with it? He called his chauffeur, asked him to prepare the car for a trip. "I need time to think," he said. But what he wanted, deep down, was time to undo. The trip to Oakland was long, though short in miles. The car felt smaller, the air denser. He didn't speak during the 4-hour drive. He only watched the landscape change with an immobile face. He thought about Clara, the courage she had to disappear, the courage he never had to be different. He arrived at the address. A discreet street, low buildings, kids playing on the sidewalk. He got out slowly, his hands clammy. He climbed the steps with silent steps. The doorbell was simple. Round. He rang it once. And waited. When the door opened, the image before him disarmed him. Clara. Her hair shorter, her face more mature. But the eyes, the same. Intense. Clear. Strong. She didn't seem surprised. She looked at him like someone who was already expecting him. Like someone who already knew this moment would come one day. "Ethan," she said. Without emotion. He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her as if he still couldn't believe she was there. Real? Alive? Unreachable? "He's my son, isn't he?" The question came out like a stone. There was no accusatory tone, only truth, and an old fear mixed with a new one. Clara didn't look away. She didn't move. She just took a deep breath. Firm. "Yes, Matteo is your son, but he is my world." The words fell between them like a verdict. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence grew louder. The sound of the street in the background. A dog barking. A ball bouncing on the asphalt. Everything seemed distant, as if they were isolated inside a thick pane of glass. Ethan tried to organize a thought, but his body spoke first. His hands trembled, his throat dry. The weight in his chest. He didn't know if he could enter. He didn't know if he should. "Why didn't you tell me?" But there was a weariness there that hadn't existed before. "Do you remember what you told me a year before it all ended? If you ever get pregnant, and we split, I will take that child from you. The Coles have power. Never forget that." Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered. The phrase was real. He said it in anger. On any night. And he never thought she would take it seriously. "Clara, You don't need to explain yourself," she interrupted him, with a gentle but firm gesture. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because he needs me, the whole, and I could only be whole away from you." The words were like clean blades. There were no shouts, no tears, but every syllable carried the pain of years. "Can I see him?" She hesitated for this first time. Her eyes flickered. Her body moved slightly. "He's at the park with my mother. He'll be back in half an hour. You can see him, but don't confuse things." "What things?" She looked at him deeply and replied, "You can be a father, but I am everything he knows, and I won't allow that to change." Ethan nodded. His gaze dropped. There was no room for dispute there. Only one possible path: to enter the other's territory with respect. And he, finally, was ready to tread carefully. And in that moment, standing on the threshold that had been closed to him for so long, Ethan felt what he had never truly felt. Guilt. Not the theatrical performative guilt, but the guilt that hurts because it recognizes, that burns because it's true, that falls silent because it knows it was wrong. Clara stepped aside, making room for him to enter. And just like that, without rituals, without hugs, without promises, the story began to reopen. Final reflection: the price of presence. Ethan entered Clara's apartment with the same feeling of invading a sanctuary. It was a small space, modest, but clean. Alive. The furniture didn't match, but every object seemed to have been placed there with an intimate purpose. There were children's drawings taped to the refrigerator, a plant on the windowsill, a crooked lamp next to a worn armchair, and in the center of it all, the subtle scent of lavender, the same one she used on her pillow when they still slept together, although now it seemed like a different perfume. More mature, more her own. Ethan saw what Clara meant. The future wasn't about redemption. It was about responsibility. And beside that woman he once loved, he finally understood that she wasn't just the mother of his son. She was unbreakable. And that he could never achieve. He understood it. Not in the arrogant way of one who finally understands a woman, but as one who, after a long time, recognizes the exact void he left. And the hardest thing to accept was that Clara was no longer in that void. She filled it alone. With silence. With struggle. With her own hands. With the precise architecture of one who learned to build from the rubble. He saw it now. In every one of her gestures. In the way she organized Matteo's life with a firm and loving routine. In the way she spoke with the parents of his schoolmates with a confident voice, unafraid of judgment. In the way she wore simple clothes that looked tailor-made, as if her body had learned to fit exactly where it wanted to. Clara flourished, and he was only a spectator. Ethan began to accompany Matteo more often. He took his son to the park on alternating Saturdays. Clara's mother supervised him with an eagle eye, never hostile, but always watchful. Clara trusted her instinct. It was like an invisible net of protection. The boy would never be completely alone with Ethan. There would always be a watchful eye nearby, and Ethan never complained about it. He accepted it, because he knew he had no ibouat to ask for more than that. One morning, after dropping Matteo off at school, Ethan saw Clara across the street. She was wearing a blue skirt, low heels, a folder under her arm, and a cup of coffee in her hand. She was talking on the phone, concentrated, walking fast. She was so clear, so solid in that instant, that Ethan stopped to watch. He saw a woman he didn't know, a woman that time had sculpted with precision. She crossed the street, hung up the phone, and saw him. She stopped in front of him. Her eyes weren't cold. They were serene, like someone who no longer expects anything, and precisely because of that, doesn't need to protect herself. "Do you need something?" she asked simply. "No," he replied, hesitant. I was going to say you look different. I'm alive. That's it. And you're learning to look." She walked past without waiting for an answer, and that resonated in him as a reminder. There are pains that don't heal. They transform. And Clara transformed. Later that same day, Ethan opened his laptop and searched her name. He found an article. Clara Aranda, architect and urban planner, winner of a regional award for a sustainable social housing project. The text spoke of her with reverence. It mentioned her education, her trajectory, her focus on vulnerable communities, without influential surnames, without inheritance. Everything was merit. Every paragraph was a confirmation of what he was already beginning to accept. Clara didn't just survive. She became someone else. And him? He remained rich. He continued signing projects, accumulating awards, attending gala dinners. But everything he carried in his pockets, the contacts, the promises, the contracts, now seemed lighter than a dry leaf compared to the concrete weight of the presence that Clara earned with her own story. The Cole power? Powerless here. Because Clara was no longer accessible through influence. She could not be bent by surnames. She was not for sale. Ethan understood. Not because he wanted to, but because he had no choice. And looking at Mateo, watching him grow with the tenderness of one who was loved unconditionally, he understood that everything Clara built, the balance, the clarity, the unconditional love, is not bought. It is not inherited. It is only earned. And he was too late. Interactive question. Now tell me, if you were in Clara's place, would you have done the same? Would you have left without telling him about the pregnancy? Comment below. I genuinely want to know what you would do, and if this story touched you in any way, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. See you in the next story. Part 2. The Architecture of Redemption. We are back with the highly requested continuation. If you thought Ethan Cole's realization was the end, you were wrong. The real story is about what a powerful man does when he realizes his power means nothing compared to the quiet strength of the woman he betrayed. If you're rooting for Ethan to finally step up, give this video a thumbs up. The new blueprint. Responsibility, not control. Ethan left Clara's small apartment that day, carrying a burden heavier than any financial loss, the weight of his own failure. The realization that Clara had built a life, a superior life, without him, was a profound shock to his system. He returned to San Francisco, but the towering glass office of Cole & Associates now felt cold, sterile, and meaningless. He understood that he couldn't simply buy his way back into Mateo's life, nor could he purchase Clara's forgiveness. His redemption required a completely different kind of architecture, one built on service, transparency, and respect. The first thing Ethan did was not about Clara, but about cleaning his own foundation. He severed ties with several influential but morally questionable partners who had been the source of his father's, and his own, arrogance. He quietly restructured his firm, redirecting a significant portion of its resources toward a new social impact division. He knew where to start. Clara's thesis. He found the public records of her award-winning sustainable housing project for single mothers. It was brilliant, practical, and desperately needed funding. He did not call her. He did not send an email. He chose the slow, respectful approach. He contacted the NGO where Clara worked, presenting himself strictly as an interested investor and architect, seeking to fund a pilot program in Oakland. He used his connections to streamline permits and secure a large, suitable plot of land, all while meticulously hiding his identity as the ultimate benefactor. He was simply an anonymous resource, clearing the bureaucratic weeds so Clara's vision could grow. An unexpected partnership. 3 months later, Clara called him. Her voice, usually serene, was tinged with disbelief. "Ethan," she began, formal and reserved. "I just received confirmation for the Oakland pilot project. It's fully funded, and the land acquisition is complete. It's moving faster than anything I've ever seen. The anonymous donor is demanding we adhere strictly to the original design. My design. Do you know anything about this? Ethan leaned back in his leather chair, a genuine, unpracticed smile touching his lips for the first time in years. I know of the project. It's an exceptional piece of work, Clara. It deserves to be built. It's more than deserved. It's a miracle, she countered. The paperwork mentions a consulting architect from an undisclosed firm who advocated fiercely for the design's integrity. They insisted the project lead, Clara Aranda, must have full creative control. Was that you? Ethan sighed, knowing he couldn't lie. The person they spoke to was me. It was the least I could do, considering my firm, my family, has always built for the privileged. Your work is what architecture should be. Clara was silent for a long moment. It wasn't the silence of fear, but of processing. You used your power to clear a path, not to block one, she finally said. That's a new architecture for you, Ethan. It's a necessary one, he admitted. This led to an unspoken agreement. Ethan never mentioned Matteo in relation to the project. Clara never asked for more funding. They began meeting regularly, but strictly on professional grounds: site visits, engineering reviews, and municipal presentations. Ethan wore simple field boots instead of his expensive Italian loafers. He listened more than he spoke. He saw Clara in her element, sharp, decisive, and commanding the respect of seasoned contractors. She wasn't just surviving. She was creating impact, building the bridge to Matteo. The professional collaboration naturally softened the edges of their personal divide. Seeing Ethan consistently prioritize her mission slowly allowed him small increases in his time with Matteo. It started with supervised park visits, then transitioned to him dropping Matteo off at his Oakland school. Ethan never overstepped. He brought simple gifts, like rare geology books or a high-quality set of colored pencils. He never talked about money or the past. He simply talked about Matteo's world, the texture of the soil in the playground, the mechanics of the cable car system, the logic behind the universe. Matteo, in turn, began to trust this new, quiet man. He didn't see the CEO. He saw the person who knew how to draw cool bridges and could explain why the Golden Gate Bridge was red and not gold. One Saturday, while they were at the local hardware store buying supplies for a birdhouse project, Matteo, looking at a bag of concrete mix, asked, "Dad, why do buildings need foundations?" Ethan knelt down, meeting his son's eyes. "Buildings need foundations, Matteo, because a foundation is what you lay down first. It's the strong, honest part that no one sees, but it has to hold up everything else: the walls, the roof, the windows. If the foundation is weak, the whole house will fall apart in a storm." Matteo nodded, understanding. "My house has a very strong foundation, right, Dad?" Ethan paused, a lump forming in his throat. He thought of Clara, the concrete she poured with her own hands, the silent strength she endured. "Yes, Matteo, your house has the strongest foundation I have ever seen. Your mother built it to last forever." Interactive. Question: Ethan is finally starting to understand that true strength is quiet. What do you think is the biggest lesson he has learned from watching Clara build her life from the rubble? Tell us your thought in the comments. The final foundation. A year after the emotional confrontation, the social housing project was nearing completion. On the dedication day, Clara stood at the podium. She gave a powerful speech about dignity, self-sufficiency, and the importance of having a safe place to land after a storm. Ethan stood at the back of the crowd, watching. He saw Matteo, nestled close to Clara's mother, clapping fiercely. He saw Clara, radiating the quiet confidence of a true leader. At the reception, Clara walked over to him, holding a champagne flute. "The board insisted on recognizing the anonymous donor," she said, her eyes challenging him. "They wanted a plaque, a dedication ceremony. I told them no. But I think you should know, the first building in the complex, the community center, is officially named the Aranda Center. Ethan's eyes widened. Clara, that's incredible. You deserve that. The lead donor finally conceded, but they left a condition. She continued, a slight, genuine smile finally reaching her eyes. They insisted that the dedication plaque for the entire project state, built upon a foundation of integrity and commitment. They said it was a non-negotiable term. Ethan nodded, recognizing his own words from his past business philosophy, now redefined by her reality. I can live with that. She set her glass down, her voice low and intimate. Ethan, you never asked for anything. You just gave. You gave Mateo time, and you gave me respect. That's more than any inheritance. She paused, then handed him a set of keys. Simple, silver fobs. My mother is moving into the community complex's dedicated family unit. Mateo and I are staying in our small apartment in Oakland. These are the keys to the new playground. Mateo wants you to help him finish building the final foundation for the swing set tomorrow morning. He says you're better at mixing concrete than anyone he knows. Ethan looked at the keys. Not the ornate bronze key of their past, but simple, silver fobs that smelled faintly of new metal and possibility. A key to the simple, hard work of being present. I'll be there, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He understood. He didn't get Clara back, not in the romantic sense. He earned something better, a clean slate, a shared purpose, and a small, hard-won place in his son's real world. His former self, the arrogant heir, had chased a kingdom. His current self, the quiet, humble father, was content with a single, perfectly poured foundation. He looked across the lot, where Mateo was running toward him, waving an orange flag. He had finally found his true architecture, meaningful conclusion, and call to action. This story of Ethan Cole and Clara Aranda teaches us that true power lies not in controlling what you have, but in humbly serving what you lost. Ethan realized his colossal wealth was nothing compared to Clara's courage, and his redemption began only when he learned to build according to her blueprints, not his own. Clara's silence was her shield, her struggle was her foundation, and in the end, her integrity became the most powerful force in the room. What do you think of Ethan's final act of redemption? Do you believe he truly changed, or is he simply trying to buy his son's love in a more sophisticated way? Let us know your honest opinion in the comments below. If you loved this powerful sequel, like the video and subscribe for more stories of profound human transformation. Check out the video appearing on your screen now for another amazing tale. Part 3. The Ultimate Test of Integrity. The story is far from over. Just when Ethan and Clara thought they had found their peace, a final, ruthless challenge arrives from the very past they tried to escape. This time, the battle isn't for love, but for the soul of the Cole legacy. Do you think Ethan can resist the power of his family name one last time? Let me know your prediction in the comments below. Subscribe and hit the bell to see if your prediction is right. The Return of the Matriarch. 6 months after the dedication of the Aranda Center, the new rhythm of life was firm. Shared co-parenting, professional respect, and a quiet, budding affection between Ethan and Clara. An affection built on shared purpose rather than past passion. However, the silence from the Cole family matriarch, Mrs. Sterling, was not a sign of peace, but of plotting. One crisp afternoon, Ethan received a call to an urgent meeting at the family's private club in Nob Hill. He walked into the reserved salon to find his mother, impeccable and severe as ever, seated across from the family's senior counsel. But the biggest surprise was the large, leather-bound folder on the table. "Ethan, your father's health has deteriorated rapidly. The doctors give him 6 months at best," Mrs. Sterling stated, bypassing all pleasantries. "The family trust requires a seamless transition of power." She tapped the folder. "This is the official deed to Cole and Associates, the controlling shares of the entire Cole global real estate empire, and the keys to the chairmanship of the family trust." Ethan stared at the fortune before him, the very kingdom he had renounced. "I thought my sister Sophia was the designated successor." "Sophia wants to breed horses in Wyoming," Mrs. Sterling scoffed. "She lacks the ruthlessness required. You, Ethan, have always possessed the architect's vision and the Cole ambition. You merely misdirected it. It's time to come home, son. The power you gave up is waiting for you." The power was intoxicating. It was everything he'd trained for, everything he'd once desired. With this, he could fund all of Clara's projects tenfold, shield Mateo from all future worries, and change the world's landscape overnight. But the condition, unspoken yet palpable, hung heavy in the air. "And what about my social impact division? What about the Aranda Center?" Ethan asked, his voice steady. Mrs. Sterling's face tightened. "Charity is best left to foundations, not to the controlling entity. You will dissolve that frivolous division, and you will cease this public co-parenting farce with that Aranda woman. The Cole heir does not build playgrounds with ex-secretaries." The ultimatum was clear: the crown or the conscience. The architect's counter-proposal. Ethan walked out of the club with the folder in his hands, feeling the cold weight of the empire. He didn't drive to his office. He drove to the Aranda Center. He found Clara in the community center's sunny kitchen, reviewing blueprints while Mateo drew silently beside her. He placed the imposing folder on the simple wooden table. "My mother just offered me everything. The chairmanship, the empire, the full power of the Cole name," he stated, his eyes locking onto hers. "The condition is that I dissolve the social impact division and cut all non-essential ties to you and Mateo." Clara didn't flinch. She simply finished marking a dimension on her blueprint, then looked up. Her eyes were serene, without judgment, almost expectant. "And what did you say, Ethan?" "I told her I needed time to consider the best use of the assets," he replied. He wasn't lying. He had a plan, one that risked everything. "I only need one thing from you, Clara. Your trust and your full commitment to a plan that will burn my world down, but will solidify yours." Clara slid the folder back across the table. "You have my trust, Ethan. I already watched you burn your world down for the right reasons once. Show me the new blueprint." The next day, Ethan walked back into the private club. Mrs. Sterling was waiting, flanked by lawyers. "I accept the chairmanship and the power," Ethan announced, his voice ringing with the authority they demanded. "But there is a condition from my end." He laid out a contract. It was meticulously drafted, using every legal loophole he knew. "I will take the reins, but the Cole Trust will immediately endow the Aranda Foundation with a non-revocable, legally untouchable fund. This fund will be solely managed by Clara Aranda and her board, dedicated to building social housing and urban renewal projects, operating entirely outside of the Cole global structure. It will be the single largest philanthropic donation in the family's history, and it will be non-negotiable." Mrs. Sterling was furious. "You are giving away family money to that little project." "I am investing in the family's future legacy, Mother. Unlike you, I understand that the true power of the Cole name should lie in its integrity and its service, not its ruthlessness. I will take the power, but I will use it to support the foundation that embodies the principles I believe in. This is the new Cole legacy, and it begins now, with the Aranda Foundation. Take it or leave it. But know this, if you refuse, the entire firm will see the internal documents detailing your past attempts to illegally separate me from my son. I will take the power, or I will take the truth. your choice. Facing the certain public and legal ruin that Ethan held in his hands, a ruin far greater than an uncomfortable charitable donation, Mrs. Sterling's resolve finally crumbled. She signed. Her hand trembled, not with weakness, but with suppressed fury at her defeat. A new foundation, a new love. Ethan took the control, but he used it for good. Within a year, he had implemented his vision. Cole Global focused on sustainable urban development, and the Aranda Foundation became the standard-bearer for compassionate architecture. On a rainy Saturday, after dropping Mateo off at a friend's house, Ethan and Clara found themselves standing in the empty original Aranda Center Community Hall. They were both soaked, laughing at the chaos of the day. "You won, Ethan," Clara said softly, looking up at him. "You took the crown, but you made it serve the conscience. I never thought I would see that day." "I didn't win, Clara. We built a foundation that finally holds," he corrected, reaching out and gently touching her cheek. "You taught me that integrity is the only material that doesn't crack under pressure." He didn't pull out a diamond ring. He didn't offer a grand transactional gesture. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of tracing paper, the same sketch of the project they designed together in their first month of marriage, the one she carried that day she left. "I want to build this now, Clara. Not a building for the firm, but a home for us. Designed by us. Built on honesty. No secrets, no conditions, just a foundation of truth." Clara's eyes welled up. She didn't cry then, but she did now. Not from pain, but from the realization that the old Ethan was finally, completely gone. "The design is perfect," she whispered, "and the site is exactly where we stand." They kissed, not with the urgency of their lost youth, but with the quiet, profound promise of two architects finally ready to build their shared, authentic life. The story of Ethan and Clara became a legend, a testament to the fact that it takes real power to let go of control, and that the strongest legacy is not measured in wealth, but in the love and quiet, honest presence you leave behind. Final call to action. What kind of name should Ethan and Clara give to their new home, symbolizing both their past betrayal and their future unity? Share your creative name ideas in the comments below. If this story inspired you to believe in second chances and true transformation, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us tell more stories that move and inspire.